Unedited vintage photos for mature audiences only. Sally Field in the 1960s. Groovy lives differed. Mid-century values evolved. Some explored nature, traveled, or made great art. In 1950s to 1970s photos, Marilyn Monroe, Ozzy Osbourne, and Paul Newman shine. Sophia Loren will try new hairstyles with witchy TV personalities and bearded drummers producing solo records. Enjoy our groovy time machine. Come on, Field performs. She's confident and stylish on screen. Goofy Southern California art is everywhere. Gidget and the Flying Nun were typecast in Field in the 1960s. Instead of whining, she sought thrilling acting studio gigs in the 1970s and 1980s, like her. Leonard Nimoy poses in front of his 1964 Buick Riviera. Spock was the coolest member of the original Star Trek group, notwithstanding Kirk's bravado and Bones' irascibility. Leonard Nimoy did the same with his pointed ears and weird eyebrows. According to his memoirs, Nimoy was the backbone of Star Trek's criminally underwatched 3 seasons. Leonard Nimoy's memory will remain forever. Janis Joplin in the studio, 1967. Janis Joplin was a late 1960s San Francisco psychedelic rock star. She performed with Big Brother and the Holding Company and was known for her bluesy voice. Despite Joplin's boost, the band's debut record failed and they spent much of 1968 on the road. Before that, Joplin arranged songs for the band and sang intensely, inspiring a generation of blues rock vocalists. The late, great comedian John Candy in 1972. John Candy studied at McMaster University in Ontario, Canada, before becoming a famous comedian in the 1980s and 1990s. Candy started acting in Canada at 22, but it took 4 more years until SCTV gave him a big break in 1976. Candy played Richie in Dr. Simon Locke and a weatherman on the Canadian children's program Cucumber. Candy learned how to collaborate and boost production in these jobs. This photo pretty much sums up what was rad if you were a teenage boy in 1985. This youngster was the coolest, as shown by his pink bike, Converse, and short shorts. How many of you rode BMX to the arcade during summer vacation, wind flowing through your mullet? A rockin' Walkman is all this child needs. In the 1980s, brightly colored bikes were popular. Bike color? Mix and match with friends. Did your team follow it? Who remembers the super strong red-headed little girl and her adventures? Pippi Longstocking, a Swedish TV series. Swedish television debuted a bizarre but entertaining program in 1969. Pippi Longstocking, a red-headed girl with superpowers, is Scandinavian, yet her bizarre world appeals to international audiences. Ingrid Nilsson's performance was key. Nilsson's body language conveyed the character's wacky sensibility to non-Swedish audiences, even when she was dubbed. The program is strange if you haven't watched it recently. Debbie Harry in 1968. Debbie Harry was adopted at 3 months old and transferred to Hawthorne, New Jersey. She studied painting at Centenary College in Hackettstown, New Jersey in the mid-60s before traveling to New York to sing. Her first singing job was backing up Capitol Records' folk group The Wind in the Willows. Harry is yet to bleach her hair in this shot from The Wind in the Willows. Imagine a folky blondie. 14-year-old David Jones, Bowie, in 1961. Before becoming a space rock star or a tiny white duke, David Bowie looked like David Bowie. The young space weirdo was born in Brixton but relocated with his family to Bromley at an early age and started performing in music and dance lessons at Burnt Ash Junior School. He quickly learned piano, bass, and baritone saxophone. In his career, the saxophone would be his main instrument. Marilyn Monroe gets ready to go on air, 1952. From industrial worker to global superstar, it takes some getting used to. Monroe was still learning how to be a celebrity in 1952. Her most notable performance was Angela in the Asphalt Jungle for RKO and MGM. Monroe also desired radio appearances. She portrayed a ditzy version of herself in a Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis performance featuring Rat Pack members. Anne Margaret consults with costume designer Don Feld about her wardrobe in the 1963 movie Viva Las Vegas. Can we applaud the early 1960s style? Always cool, black pants and sweaters. Viva Las Vegas was hurried into production without a screenplay, according to director George Sidney. He and Sally Benson wrote the movie in 11 days since he had Elvis and Anne Margaret. Sidney claimed it started with an Arabian. We rewrote the script in 11 days. We moved everything to Las Vegas. Tommy Lee and Heather Locklear in 1985, prior to their marriage. These brilliant young talents met in their early 20s at the height of their game. Motley Crue was Tommy Lee's peak. The band had recently published Theater of Pain, an album that established hair metal, and Locklear was starring in Dynasty, a popular primetime show. The rock star said they fell in love at first sight. A year after meeting, Lee and Locklear married on May 10, 1986. Lee added, "I think we'll be the coolest grandma and grandpa in the world." 1993 brought divorce. Tom Cruise and Sean Penn on the set of Taps, 1981. Taps, a military drama set at Bunker Hill Military Academy, introduces some of the most prominent performers of the 20th century. The picture stars Tom Cruise, Sean Penn, and Giancarlo Esposito, better known as Gus from Breaking Bad. Cruise was originally chosen as a background character, but the director liked his demeanor with the company and increased his part during rehearsals. A very cool Kiss costume at the Halloween parade in West Village, New York, 1978. Cool Child. By 1977, the band that rocked all night and partied every day had become a 4-quadrant band that appealed to everyone. Kids loved the band's theatricality, while long-haired heavy metalers liked the riffs. They liked the makeup, fire-breathing, and strange personalities. Kids impersonating Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley during trick-or-treating in 1979 were common. Hopefully, he has some pals to round out the band. Eddie Van Halen and Michael Jackson chill in the studio while recording Beat It. Michael Jackson knew Beat It was a success. Why not? At that time, everything he touched was gold or platinum. But the song needed something more. He wanted a Van Halen solo. The guitarist, who had a streak of successful records, played the solo for free, but had some conditions. Van Halen requested that Michael teach him how to dance and that he not be recognized for the solo because he didn't want other Van Halen members to find out. Cool, man. Lovely Leah Thompson as Lorraine Baines in Back to the Future, 1985. Leah Thompson was one of the few actors who can appear like a 1950s teeny bopper, an 80s mother, a future casino queen, and her Wild West counterpart. After Eric Stoltz, the original Marty McFly, left the cast, she was kept on. Thompson had largely makeup-related challenges throughout filming. Her old age makeup for the film's commencement required 3.5 hours every day. ZZ Top hanging out by the ice machine, 1970. ZZ Top were 3 Texas lads attempting to find their sound before the Eliminator. Billy Gibbons established the band in 1969, but drummer Frank Beard and bassist Dusty Hill joined him in Houston in early 1970 to complete the lineup. They soon started playing, and they signed with London Records that year. Since they're still together, playing everywhere helped them tighten up. Billy Gibbons, guitarist, explained, "After 6 months, we were playing all the quirky bars. The stage spectacle extended to the studio. We played in one room, but we used modern recording methods. We became a bit more than a 3-piece, using overdubbing to boost our sound. Rhythm guitar and texture were natural supports. That's all." A young daredevil performing a stunt on his bike, 1972. This child is awesome. In the 1970s, everyone aspired to be a daredevil, which meant gathering friends to construct ramps, serve as props, and entertain the crowd. This photo is remarkable. The tiny Evel Knievel has a fan club and seems to have Dad on his porch. The snapshot captures the finest part of 1970s childhood, when you had to go outdoors and create your own fun, even if it was risky. A brunette Elizabeth Montgomery, 1961. Elizabeth Montgomery worked hard to become an actress before twiddling her nose on Bewitched and caused her husband difficulties. In the 1960s, she switched from theater to TV guest appearances. The Twilight Zone, Burke's Law, and Boris Karloff's Thriller featured her. Rusty Heller, the nightclub performer on The Untouchables, was her most lauded role. This performance earned her an Emmy nomination and showed producers her potential. Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, and Harrison Ford take a break while filming in 1977. In Tunisia and Hertfordshire, A New Hope's young performers played space pirates and cosmic queens. Their youthful naivete demonstrates they had no idea they were creating one of the most innovative films ever. Mark Hamill told The Guardian that he had a one-time infatuation with Fisher while filming A New Hope. "I loved Carrie, but I knew from past experience that dating someone on set was bad. We made excuses. Alcohol and kissing strategies were discussed. I'm a decent kisser," I said. "I prefer attracting women rather than pursuing them." "What do you mean?" she questioned. Teenage kisses. John Belushi at the Rockefeller Center ice rink for a skit on Saturday Night Live in 1975. Saturday Night Live's first regular humor was the not-ready-for-primetime players' killer bee costumes with honey, queen, and stinging jokes. John Belushi made this absurd outfit cool. Belushi looks cool in a bee costume and odd spring stuff. Maybe he's cool or has the look of a man who'd rather wear a bee costume than anybody else. This photo makes us believe we can wear a bee costume. Jeff Bridges and Jessica Lange in the 1976 remake of the movie King Kong. Before The Dude, an American Horror Story, they were on the run from King Kong in the 1976 version. Lange had never acted before being cast. Dino De Laurentiis sensed something in her as a New York fashion model. The film was a smash despite concerns over Kong's outfit and the directors' and producers' disputes. King Kong quadrupled its budget and tied with Logan's run for Best Visual Effects at the 1977 Oscars. Clint Eastwood takes a break on the set of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly in 1966. Clint Eastwood's The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly trilogy is one of the best westerns ever made. Eastwood symbolizes late 1960s pessimism as the man with no name. Eastwood was persuaded to star in this early career-defining picture. Sergio Leone came to California to offer Eastwood the part, but he only wanted $250,000 and a 10% share of the film's North American revenues. It's a lot of bread considering the film grossed $25 million. Bombshell Marilyn Monroe draped in a sweater. Monroe left an enduring influence on Hollywood during her short 9 to 10-year fame. She was one of the first megastars to appear in newspapers and introduce a wave of attractive blondes with breathy voices and cheerful on-screen personalities. Monroe's fame was unprecedented among tabloid stars. Monroe's nightmare. She wanted to act with respect. She studied at Strasberg and discovered truth in her art, but she overdosed in 1963. 1970 wrought iron VW Beetle. This is the coolest thing we've seen in ages. The wrought iron VW Bug is one of those pieces of history that could only exist in the 60s and 70s, when people could playfully tweak the way their favorite things looked and worked. This automobile is great for spring, but not for rain. A blacksmith sculpted the wrought iron VW Bug like a VW Beetle for a car shop sign. After constructing the bones, the blacksmith added metal swirls. It's amazing. Grace Slick and Janis Joplin, 1967. Grace Slick and Janis Joplin, the San Francisco psychedelic rock queens, were seldom pictured together. Jim Marshall may have photographed their few images together. Photographer's words, "I picked up Janis at Grace's residence in the morning. I convinced Janis to take photographs that day. Janis and Grace were close friends, but everyone assumed they were rivals. The single time they were taken together, we were all being crazy towards the end." Vincent Price and Alice Cooper were up to no good in 1978. Price, a B-movie star, and Cooper, a shock rocker, are really quite similar. Both were dedicated to entertaining their followers and preoccupied with living a morbid existence to fit their work. Cooper contributed a monologue to Price's 1975 single, The Black Widow. Despite their differences, these stars were scary twins. Pod means coffin. Linda Ronstadt preparing to roar at the Wisconsin Music Festival, 1970s. Linda Ronstadt is one of those performers who did, sang, and accomplished more than you believed imaginable. She did it when many other artists failed. She and the Stone Ponies had success with Different Drum in the late 1960s. Ronstadt went solo in 1970. She was billed as a new kind of country vocalist, and her backup band featured Eagles members. Leonard Nimoy, George Takei, DeForest Kelley, and James Doohan at the first space shuttle showing in 1976. Some of the Enterprise's most prominent crew members supported NASA's shuttle launch in 1976. Gene Roddenberry, Nimoy, Takei, Kelley, and Doohan unveiled this shuttle. Star Trek has visited NASA before. According to NASA's website, these nice guys attended several NASA special events and helped promote the organization. They're aggressively marketing. Al Pacino on the set of Scarface, 1983. Scarface, set in Miami, was primarily filmed in Los Angeles to avoid trouble with wild Floridian natives who didn't like a movie depicting the cocaine mania sweeping over their streets. Tony's mansion, the film's most prominent landmark, is in Santa Barbara, not Miami. Director Brian De Palma said the team was railroaded out of Miami after 12 days of shooting. Everything else was shot in California on a soundstage, save for some outside shots in Miami. Sophia Loren even made a green wig look amazing in 1969. Sophia Loren has been a global sensation since 1969. In 1951, she appeared in Era Louis CC. Her breakthrough came in 1953's Aida and 1954's The Gold of Naples. Loren topped the Hollywood A-list a decade later. 2 women earned her an Academy Award and $1 million. She prepared to own the 1970s. An airline ad featuring a delicious meal from the 1960s. Airline food, what's up? Why can't we enjoy fruits and cheese like these 1960s travelers? Many 1960s flights offered menus that rivaled today's top restaurants. Chefs were successful in preparing aircraft meals since flying was a privilege and consumers anticipated a meal. Even though no one was partying, the greatest in-flight meals made the aircraft seem like a fancy dance was about to start. Jane Mansfield standing beside Miss Hollywood in 1957. Hollywood wanted to capitalize on Marilyn Monroe's fame, so they hired every blonde beauty they could. Jane Mansfield took advantage of her brief fame. Will Success Spoil Rock Hunter? And the Sheriff of Fractured Jaw featured her. Mansfield hosted a popular nightclub performance when her 1960s fame faded. She died in a 1967 car accident on the way to a New Orleans engagement with her family. Who remembers wearing bodysuits in the 1970s? Disco, roller skates, and bodysuits ruled the 70s. These leotards were originally workout essentials but rapidly became athleisure staples for American women. They were black and flowery bodysuits for everyone. Women wore these one-piece dresses everywhere, particularly on the dance floor. Danskin and Capezio began creating one-piece clubwear in the mid-1970s. Cast of The Witches of Eastwick, 1987. It looked like adapting John Updike's The Witches of Eastwick would be easy, but it wasn't. Cher was harassed for her age, and director George Miller battled the producers over the money. Miller left twice for studio concerns. He told THR, "Some manufacturers thought erratically. It went insane without Jack Nicholson. Nothing mattered. The first mistake I made was sitting down at a production meeting and hearing, as we usually do, 'Okay, where can we cut the budget?' I answered, 'Oh, I don't need a trailer, since I never use it. I'm with actors or on set. We did Mad Max in Australia. We're always into something, so I never had a trailer. Now that's logical. I was always a film producer.' But she also said, 'Oh, this guy's negotiable on everything.'" Tom Hanks, 1980. Tom Hanks was a poor actor before he became the world's favorite dad, a biblical detective, and Saturday Night Live's finest host. Hanks began acting at the end of the 1970s after studying theater, but 1980 was his breakout year. He Knows You're Alone and Mazes and Monsters, both published in 1980, were cult classics and unusual beginnings for a guy who would become one of our most adored actors. Barbara Eden in the 1970s. I Dream of Jeannie star Barbara Eden portrayed Jeannie in the 1960s. She faced a decision toward the decade's end. In 1974, she founded her own production business and started making programs and movies for herself. Based on the song Harper Valley PTA, she appeared in 1978. Eden portrayed Stella Johnson, a cosmetic saleswoman who confronts her daughter's PTA board snobs. Eden returned to the top once the picture generated a blockbuster TV program. Black Sabbath backstage at Cobo Hall in Detroit, Michigan, 1976. Black Sabbath rocked Detroit on November 26, 1976 during the next-to-last Technical Ecstasy tour with Ozzy Osbourne. Even though they were fighting with Osbourne, the band was in great form with a set list that included all their albums. Osbourne contemplated quitting while recording Technical Ecstasy. His memoir stated, "I even hated Blizzard of Oz t-shirt." In the studio, Tony Iommi kept saying, "We've got to sound like Foreigner or Queen." Found it odd that the bands we inspired were now affecting us. Buddy Holly recorded at Bradley's Barn in Nashville, 1956. Holly became a full-time pianist after graduating from Lubbock High School in 1955. He opened for Bill Haley and his Comets after watching Elvis Presley in Texas. Holly, then known as Holly, impressed on stage and signed with Decca Records. He recorded in Nashville on January 26, 1956 for the label. Holly was angry that the label chose personnel and arrangements. After his first single failed, he left Nashville and Decca Records to establish the Crickets, changing rock and roll. Christopher Reeve as Superman. Christopher Reeve convinced us that Superman could fly. Looking back at his stint in the blue tights in the 1970s and 1980s, it's clear that no one was more equipped to portray that role, but during pre-production of Richard Donner's picture, there was quite the quest for the Man of Steel. Superman was originally cast as an A-list actor. They unsuccessfully pursued Robert Redford, Sylvester Stallone, and Paul Newman. Christopher Reeve was too underweight at first, but he bulked up and impressed casting agents and producers, who cast him as the last son of Krypton. A cool photo of Phil Collins from 1980. Is this an English thug? Phil Collins, the drummer/singer-songwriter who made us air drum to the world's best Phil. This was shot around the time he recorded In the Air Tonight in a London townhouse on his best album. His debut solo album, Face Value, was being written in 1980. He recorded most tracks on an 8-track before overdubbing on a 24-track. Great photo of a very handsome Paul Newman in Venice, Italy, 1963. Paul Newman had a dream career by 1963. He married his soulmate and was nominated for an Academy Award for Cat on a Hot Tin Roof and The Hustler. Newman's career changed in 1963. He was nominated for Best Actor in 3 films that year, including HUD. He starred in Cool Hand Luke, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, and the terribly unappreciated Hombre in the following years. Newman had a great 1960s, but he only got better in the 20th century. The snapshot shows him enjoying his life thus far. Helen Mirren, 1970. Helen Mirren is a sneaky actor. Her career shows that she was in an avalanche of pictures in the second half of the 20th century. Her filmography justifies the exaggeration. Doing Her Own Thing, a 1970 documentary, featured Mirren despite her scant film appearances. After the documentary, she played Lady M in the Scottish play. She was also on every screen for decades. Hitchhiker in California, 1968. LA is difficult to navigate without a Batmobile. This Batman hitchhiking shot may have promoted the 1966 to 1968 Batman series. The campy entertainment was ahead of its time. If not, this is either the actual Batman or some Joker with a great costume. Hopefully, he got a ride to Gotham, which may be off the 101. Los Angeles blues rock band Canned Heat in 1968. In the 1960s, Canned Heat was a band every music lover had to see. The ensemble was best known for Going Up the Country, which was used in advertisements and is now a standard on 1960s playlists. The song reached number 11 on the U.S. Billboard charts as the unofficial Woodstock theme tune. Despite its current lineup, the band still performs. Paul Newman and Robert Redford in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, 1969. We'll wait. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid is a decade-defining picture. The film is emotional, hilarious, and subtly critiques 1969 attitudes. Is it surprising that William Golding wrote it? These two amazing Western kiddies are among the most fascinating cowboy heroes because they spend the whole film fleeing from a battle. The film is intriguing because of its outlandish ideas. Robert Plant with The Runaways in 1975. This shot is amazing. Show your monitor your coolometers. See that? It's insane. Even though Plant was leaving Led Zeppelin in 1975, he was still a rock icon. The Runaways would never pass up a chance to associate with Plant, even if they were punks before punk. A rock god with these kids? He sought new bandmates. Lita Ford, he requested bass. For whom? I asked Led Zepp whether he was drunk or joking. He appeared serious. Sheriff Bart, Cleavon Little, and Jim, Gene Wilder, in a scene from the hilarious Mel Brooks film Blazing Saddles, 1974. Blazing Saddles is one of the funniest movies ever. Mel Brooks, Richard Pryor, and other writers used 1970s sensibilities to produce one of the most provocative and hilarious works of entertainment. Brooks and crew skewered every color, gender, and preference in just 2 hours. Audiences loved it. Blazing Saddles fans will be smacked with a 10-gallon hat. The film entertains while gently challenging viewers' biases. Singer-slash-actress Chris Knoll hosted her own radio show for the GIs in Vietnam. She did 4 tours of Vietnam, and her helicopter was shot down twice. Photo from 1966. A Date with Chris Knoll was her Armed Forces radio program, but she also acted. She met troops at bases across Vietnam during her series. Even under death threats, she played albums for the GIs and met as many as possible. She said, "I felt safe. I enjoyed going in helicopters. I now panic in helicopters. One helicopter's hydraulic system failed and we crashed, which was terrifying." The Bangles, 1986. Is your walk Egyptian? The Bangles, formed in 1981 by Susanna Hoffs, sisters Vicky and Debbie Peterson, would have succeeded in any period. They look good, and their tunes have a timeless pop sense that makes you tap your toes whether you've heard them before or not. The band has performed with rock legends. In 1988, Mike Campbell of the Heartbreakers invited them to sing backup on Tom Petty's solo smash, Waiting for Tonight. Prince wrote their greatest song, Manic Monday. The Beatles perform at Shea Stadium, 1965. The Beatles performed at Shea Stadium in New York City for 56,000 screaming fans on August 15, 1965. Liverpool played on a scarcely serviceable platform in the stadium center. The band rocked without monitors or the capacity to hear anything except their audience. If you attended this event, you saw something extraordinary, as the Beatles would soon retire from live performances. If so, wear Chelsea boots and yell, "Help!" The Queen of Halloween herself, Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, in a promo photo for Movie Macabre in 1982. Elvira's Movie Macabre was the finest way to see the overflow of B-horror films in the early 1980s. The series featured Cassandra Peters in her signature goth punk clothing, beehive hair, and pancake makeup. Elvira mocking poor movies in her Valley Girl voice was the best. Knott's Berry Farm hired Elvira to headline their October Halloween haunt when she became a hit. Since then, she's been in movies, TV shows, and horror conventions. As if. Halloween, 1978. Halloween by John Carpenter in 1978 revolutionized film. It's a great slasher film. He introduced Michael Myers and showcased a young Jamie Lee Curtis. She's clever, humorous, and courageous while fleeing a knife-wielding psychopath in the film. The film was shot in Pasadena, California in April, not in Haddonfield, Illinois on October 31st. Halloween is still frightening. Barbara Eden in this I Dream of Jeannie Halloween photo is simply magical. I Dream of Jeannie never had a Halloween episode, but when your show is about a genie who loves an astronaut, isn't every episode Halloween? Are genie and astronaut common Halloween costumes? In marketing photographs for her program, Barbara Eden was always been a goofball. I Dream of Jeannie was a response to Bewitched, another sitcom about a supernatural creature falling in love with a human person. This Halloween shot may have been reference to that. Bob Ross, 1980s. Was Bob Ross the most soothing? Even if you weren't painting with the Zen master, it was fun to put him on the tube and watch this afro-wearing Picasso create a wilderness island or a hillside with trees. Ross replied, "Earlier someone wrote, 'Bob, everything in your world looks so happy.' For sure, so I paint. I can construct the world I desire and make it joyful. Watch the news for negative things." C-3PO, Anthony Daniels, getting some much-needed shade in the desert while filming Star Wars Episode IV: A New Hope, 1977. A New Hope was largely shot in Tunisia, where the scorching desert made shooting difficult. After donning the outfit, C-3PO actor Anthony Daniels hurt himself. 2 steps and he broke his left leg, injuring his foot. Why does Daniels return to the role that injured him? Only I wear the suit, he told People. Nobody's insane enough. Stay wild for us and the supporters. Dennis Hopper in a scene from the movie Easy Rider, 1969. Easy Rider director Dennis Hopper was bred to be wild. Despite his reputation as an actor who fried most of his brain cells in the early 1960s, Hopper made a significant contribution to the film. He wanted to follow motorcycles throughout America and include current rock and roll in the film. Hopper irritated everyone while filming. He piled up huge expenditures, had co-star Peter Fonda relive traumatic memories, and drank constantly, feeding his anxiety. He condensed the 1960s into 90 minutes. Led Zeppelin drummer John Bonham and his son Jason, early 1970s. Rock fans would tell you that John Bonham is one of the finest drummers ever. He summoned Valhalla's thunder to support Led Zeppelin in his brief tenure on Earth. After learning from the best, Jason became one of the most sought-after drummers of the 1980s. He replaced his dad in Zepp and backed up your favorite bands. Jason Bonham can play UFO-style shredders or Foreigner-style pop. The charming Bewitched witches in their Halloween photo. Television in the late 1960s was great for a certain kind of creepy youngster growing up in that groovy age. In 1964, Elizabeth Montgomery as Samantha Stevens led Bewitched, a pioneering program that mixed magical realism, horror, and off-the-wall humor. Montgomery was so famous as Samantha that she garnered many Emmy and Golden Globe nominations and appeared in a series of Japanese Mother chocolate advertisements where she twitched her nose as an homage to one of the best sitcoms of all time. Victoria Principal in the 1970s. Victoria Principal studied acting in New York and London before playing Pamela Ewing on Dallas. She almost died. While studying medicine at Miami-Dade Community College, a drunk driver hit her on her way home. The principal recovered for months. She even considered retaking her first-year college classes. The story prompted her to finally act. The Life and Times of Judge Roy Bean earned her a Golden Globe nomination 2 years after the shot. Natalie Wood hanging out in the 1970s. Natalie Wood took a vacation in 1970 after her huge popularity in the 1950s and 1960s. She had her first child, Natasha Gregson, and reunited with actor Robert Wagner while off-screen. Lana said, "She was a lovely mother and stepmother, and her Hollywood marriage was one of the greatest. She and RJ started with love and grew. They resolved their issues and accepted the time's adjustments. Like everyone who settled into a lengthy marriage, they were more determined than others to make it work." Jacqueline Bisset stands in a frame within a frame, 1970s. Before becoming a megastar, Jacqueline Bisset was a Hollywood fixture. She featured in Two for the Road and Casino Royale, but Airport, the 1970 catastrophe film, was her breakthrough. This actress may go anywhere from there. She starred in big-budget films and European classics like Francois Truffaut's Day for Night. She became Angelina Jolie's godmother when her 1980s career waned. Beautiful British actress Julie Christie, 1965. Christie, who won an Academy Award for McCabe and Mrs. Miller, Shampoo and Nashville, was a character actress in the 1960s who stole sequences from big stars. Darling and Dr. Zhivago were her breakout pictures in 1965. Her performance in Darling was the most lauded of the pictures. She won an Oscar, a BAFTA, and a Golden Globe as Diana Scott. Her great award run begun here.